waiting to get washed away.
Delivering fascinating subjects, interesting talk, and boobs and fart jokes. AD on iHeartRadio.
Yeah, oh, let's go. Talking that mess, better act like you know. Oh, let's go tonight. Walk away, punk, yeah, bitch. That's right, I know this. Los Angeles, in the midst of an intense heat wave. We thought we'd find out how it's impacting residents with the top signs that it's too hot in L.A., other than the fact that parts of Funkhouser are sticking to other parts of Funkhouser the moment he exits the house. Do you powder up? Do you gold bond the man tackle?
I was looking for the baby powder, but I couldn't find it, and I had a rough couple of days there, and don't tell the girlfriend, I told you on the air, but she's having a similar issue. Last night, she's like, it's too hot. I'm sticking to myself. Yeah, rash. Everyone has a rash right now. Need the gold-bound medicated powder.
Let me ask, your chosen form of exercise, which is a little bounce, is there anything less inductive of that than this weather? Like, do you sit there sweating with, like, sheet on, sheet off, one leg out, one leg in? I don't know. Fan or no fan? It's just blowing the hot air around. And like, but do you get to the point in bed where you're like, don't touch me, it's too hot?
Well, it's kind of like a give and take. Like in bed last night, it was no sheets, but also no clothes.
Okay, now I almost spat out my drink. I was like, oh, good. Funkhouser's talking. Time for some liquid refreshment. Whoop. That was a close one.
We're even. We're even today.
Yeah. You should hit the news bed, and we'll talk about the top signs that it's too hot in L.A. Besides the fact that Funkhouser's sleeping in the buff, but not getting any. The top signs that it's too hot in L.A. The chick Eddie Murphy just picked up on Sunset Boulevard has beads of sweat all over her Adam's apple. You can tell it's too hot in L.A. because Nicki Minaj is renting out the shade underneath her humongous butt. People are trying to stand between Martha Stewart and Gwyneth Paltrow just for the frosty air. Smug Hollywood celebrities are so drained they can barely gather the energy to tell the rest of the country what to think. The sex offender on Hollywood Boulevard is sweating right through his Elmo costume, and the number one way you can tell it's too hot in L.A., people are sweating more than a woman alone in an elevator with Ray Rice. And that's the news.
Elmo wants a beer.
50 years after the war on poverty was first waged, there are signs that a new offensive is definitely needed. I don't know if you caught it or not, but newly released census data reveals that 110 million Americans, more than a third of the country, are receiving government assistance of some kind. The number counts people receiving what are known as means-tested federal benefits or subsidies based on income. This is welfare programs like food stamps or subsidized housing to the program most commonly referred to as welfare, which is temporary assistance for needy families. Yeah. The Cato Institute's Michael Tanner said that in the 8 most generous states, the benefits can be tantamount to a $20 minimum wage, which would exceed the $7.25 minimum wage in most states. So, this is what you get happening. In many cases, people actually do better on welfare than they could in an entry-level job. And people that are for this say the safety net is necessary to keep Americans from living in dire conditions. As for concerns that these benefits pay better than working, they argue that the solution is to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. So either we raise the minimum wage or we give them more welfare. Now, I'm not exactly the father of the Keynesian economic theory, but to me, yeah. Hello? Have you heard of inflation? If you do neither, then the problem will solve itself due to the laws of supply and demand. Hello? Anybody listening? Although, how do you feel about the idea of the minimum wage going to $15? Like, $15 for fast food workers. How do you feel about that? Is that a thing? Do you think that? I don't. I'm not a fan of that, because that would mean that fast food workers getting paid infinitely more than I got paid when I started in radio, and more than I think most people starting in radio are getting paid now. And while, let's face it, nobody really gets rich doing radio, or most people don't get rich doing radio, here's the thing. It's a career. And starting out at the bottom, you're picking up important, unique skills that can help give you a career. Albeit, the radio industry is not necessarily a healthy one, but there's other similar situations where you're starting at the bottom, but you're learning valuable skills that make you a unique member of the workforce. And if you're getting paid more to work in fast food, well, there's not going to be a whole lot of motivation to work and build unique skills. So, I don't think you should get $15 an hour for working at McDonald's. I don't. But by the same token, I think... Well, I don't think you should get paid $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. McDonald's are a company. It's a myriad situation with lots of complicated, it's just can open worms everywhere. I don't think McDonald's should be allowed to pay their employees so little that their employees can then go get government subsidies. I don't feel like you and I, the American taxpayer, should be picking up the slack. I don't feel like McDonald's employees should be making so little that they can get welfare benefits. So what we're doing with our hard-earned tax dollar is making McDonald's richer and allowing them to pay them less money. See what I'm saying here? It's not an easy situation. I don't know. I'm really not entirely sure what the best answer is. I do know I don't feel like you should get $15 for flipping burgers, but I also feel McDonald's shouldn't be allowed to pay their employees so little that they can get government subsidies and live off the back of our hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears and tax dollars. I don't think that's okay either. But whatever the case may be, well, I don't know. Maybe the situation is somewhere between $7.25 and $15 an hour. I'm not sure. I do know this, though. It seems like at least once a year, Urban Outfitters gets in trouble for selling some edgy piece of clothing that totally crosses the line. The latest would be this. Urban Outfitters has apologized for selling a vintage Kent State University sweatshirt that features blood spatters and bullet holes. In case you don't know why that's horrible, in case you're one of those people that is looking at their cell phone going, what is a U2 and how do I get it off of there? In case you weren't brought up to speed on that piece of our American history, on May 4th, 1970, the National Guard shot and killed 4 unarmed Kent State students who were protesting the war in Vietnam. It's known as the Kent State Massacre, and it's considered a national tragedy. Urban Outfitters pulled the sweatshirt yesterday after people flipped the hell out, but claimed it wasn't a reference to the massacre. They said, it was never our intention to allude to the tragic events that took place at Kent State in 1970. This one-of-a-kind item was part of our sun-faded vintage collection. The red stains are discoloration from the original shade of the shirt. Yeah. And here's the thing. Kent State's colors, blue and yellow, which, as far as we know, don't fade into blood red. Also, I'd be inclined to believe Urban Outfitters if they didn't make the same excuse every year for some other piece of thing. By the way, hipsters that shop at Urban Outfitters. I actually used to have a store. And what you do when you have a store is you go buy stuff for that store. And you go to something like the Project Convention or the Magic Convention in Las Vegas, which is called Magic, but really it's garment sales. And there tends to be, and this is where the vast majority of all the stores, from little mom and pop stores to big conglomerates, do their buying for the year. They go around, they look at different designers, they look at different food, clothing suppliers, and they decide what they're going to buy. That's upstairs. Downstairs at these conventions, there tends to be this thing called the off-price convention. What is off-price? Off-price is like, it's things that didn't quite make it. It's stuff where, it was a limited run of something. Or it was a limited run of something because they made too many of them and it didn't take off. Or the company went out of business. Or whatever the case may be. This is the off-price store. And if you are willing to spend ass tons of money and buy huge amounts of quantity, you can get fantastic deals on stuff that you can then resell. And there's one of two ways you can do it. You can be like Ross Dress for Less or something like that. And you can put out these cheap and cheerful sort of, you ever go to Ross Dress for Less and you go, hey, that's interesting. I've never seen this brand of jeans anywhere else, just here. Or I haven't seen that particular pair of Adidas anywhere else. That's kind of cool. You don't see that every year or every place. And that pair of Adidas is only like $30 as opposed to the usual $75. Wow. That's interesting. Now, walk your ass over from Ross Dress for Less over to Urban Outfitters. They do all their shopping at off price too. But rather than saying, hey, we pass the savings on to you, they go, this is limited, one-of-a-kind stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. You love paying too much for crap, don't you, hipsters? Yeah, you do. And that same pair of Adidas that was sort of like, this didn't really take off, so we're selling it for $30. At a Ross Dress for Less, you go into Urban Outfitters, and that same pair of Adidas this was a limited run, and it will cost you $150 as opposed to the usual $75. So, hipsters think you're expressing your individuality by going into places like Urban Outfitters and doing your clothing shopping there. You're being taken roughly from behind without the benefit of lube by corporate America, who realize you're too stupid to shop around. Yep. So the Minnesota Vikings have reinstated Adrien Peterson, maybe because they got trounced on Sunday. They deactivated him for this past Sunday's game due to his indictment on child abuse charges. In a statement, the team said the decision was made after significant thought, discussion, and consideration, as evidenced by our decision to deactivate Adrien from Sunday's game. This is clearly a very important issue. At this time, however, we believe this is a matter of due process and we should allow the legal system to proceed so we can come to the most effective conclusions and then determine the appropriate course of action. The rather sudden about face kind of makes you wonder if their change of heart had anything to do with the fact that the Vikings were trounced by the New England Patriots without Adrien on Sunday. They lost 30-7. Yeah, I guess they don't care if he beats his kid as long as he beats the defensive line. He's apologized. He says he's not a child abuser, though. In his first public comment, what did he say? He said he's learned a lot, and he will reevaluate how he disciplines his kids moving forward. But he also said he believes he could have been, quote, lost in the streets without similar discipline that he got from his family growing up. He said, no one can understand the hurt that I feel for my son and for the harm I caused him. My goal is to always teach my son right from wrong, and that's what I tried to do that day. He said, I'm not a perfect parent, but I am without a doubt not a child abuser. I'm someone who disciplined his kid and did not intend to cause him any injury. But you did cause him injury, didn't you? You lost control while disciplining your child. That's not a good quality to have as a parent. Where you haul off and beat him till he's scarred. That being said, I'm not entirely sure that this really has anything to do with football. Once it became known to the public, well, then it affected football. But that's the ever-wavering moral high ground that adjusts itself for the sake of the almighty dollar that the NFL seems to occupy in this day and age. Thank you so much for hanging out, being part of my radio family. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again.
You know how a lot of times you feel like it's cool to turn the other cheek and give people the benefit of the doubt even when they don't deserve it.